everyone, and welcome to the Moonshine Jesus Show, brought to you by ProgressiveChristianity.org, a wonderful place for all your progressive Christian needs. Hope you'll check that organization out at their website and on social media, and hope that you'll follow the Moonshine Jesus Show wherever you get your podcasts, and of course on Facebook as well. Today, we're talking about Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice.
Don't say it again.
I won't say it again. That's it. There's two Beetlejuices. Okay. I said it again. Oops. Here it comes. We're talking about Beetlejuice, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I am joined, as always, by Mark Sandlin. How you doing today, Mark?
Doing great, sir. I'm looking forward to this.
Me too. A big fan of the original Beetlejuice, and I can't wait to get into Beetlejuice. But before we do, we are going to need some drinks. Do you have a drink, Mark?
I do. I am actually drinking a cocktail called a Beetlejuice. It's spice rum, blue curacao, and apple juice. And I went ahead, since it sounded like a tiki drink, and put it in a glass tiki.
Oh, I like that green color.
Little umbrella, a little purple, a little the tip of the hat to the Beetlejuice. So that's what I went with. How about you, sir? What'd you decide to go with?
So I also went with a Beetlejuice cocktail, but it's different. It's vodka, Midori sour, blue curacao, and sweet and sour. And I've got this in this skull. You can kind of see it's actually green, but it's a kind of a tinted skull, so it kind of makes it look like purpley orange, but it's actually green inside there. So cheers to you, Mark.
Cheers, sir.
And I should say that as we're drinking up this good stuff, one thing I haven't told you yet is if you haven't seen Beetlejuice, because it's relatively new, we will have spoilers. So if
it's more fun that way.
It's more fun that way. And if you don't mind, grab yourself a drink and come join the conversation on Beetlejuice. Be right back.
Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus, won't you shine a light?
Welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. You're joining us for our Geek Out segment. We're just going to take a little time here to let our geek flags fly. We won't spend too much time here because we want to get on to our next segment where we talk about the theological and political things that go on in the movie and how we see the parts of our modern world connecting with the themes of the movie. But I do want us to geek out a little bit. I got a quick question. You've already said that you were a big fan of the first movie, yes?
Yes, absolutely.
So how do you think this one was? Just overall, what did you think of this movie?
Overall, I really liked it. And I really thought it paid honor to the first one while telling us a bit of a new story. And I think we got a little bit of emotional weight in this one, which was unexpected and kind of, I think, good. I really appreciated it. I liked seeing where the Dietz family was after all of these years, and I thought that they did that in a really good way. I think that holding true to the practical effects nature of the original one, carrying that on, I think that was a good decision. I have some of the same concerns as a lot of people about, I think, too many plot lines and things like that. But all in all, I really liked it. I thought it was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed seeing claymation. I enjoyed seeing practical effects. Maybe there's nostalgia going on here for me. There most definitely is, actually. But I loved it. I thought it was a lot of fun. What did you think, Mark? And were you a fan of the original one?
I loved the original. I've watched it too many times, probably. And I agree with a lot of stuff that you said. As a matter of fact, some of the things you mentioned, I'm going to ask you more about.
Sure.
Here in this segment. I thought it was a lot of fun. And I've started to become a person who realizes, I think that that's one of the most important things for me when it comes to a movie. Did I enjoy it? Was it fun? I don't need to overanalyze things. I can if I need to,
Right.
But in a lot of ways, I'm just looking to enjoy myself. I want some good escapism. The world is tough nowadays,
Yeah,
and it's
I've heard that.
stressful. It's lovely to have kind of beautiful escapism. And I
Mm.
felt like this was a great example of just genuine escapism and having fun and just buying into it and letting it take you along for the ride. And it did that brilliantly. I'm curious, how do you think it holds up in comparison to one?
I think it holds up really well. I think that it did tell a different story. I think that the story was entertaining. I was there for it. I enjoyed watching it. I wanted to see it again. I haven't seen it again yet, but this was one that I'm like, yeah, I want to go back for this.
Yeah.
This is one that I think is just as much fun as the original, but does tell a little bit of a different story. So I think it held up well. I think it honored the original story well. I think it was obviously clearly in the same line, and I think it made some adjustments that were important as well. I think one thing that I think like I hadn't maybe put together when I was a kid watching the first one is how problematic it was that Beetlejuice wanted to marry like a teenager. And so I went back and
Right.
watched it a couple years ago after several years of not watching it. I'm like, oh yeah, this is the plot of this movie. Like that's kind of problematic. And
Yeah.
so we've got Beetlejuice chasing an adult now, at
Right.
least. So I think there were some adjustments that maybe made it play better in 2024. But overall, I think this one's going to hold up. I think the practical effects, the way it honored the original one, I think it's going to hold up pretty well. What's your impression?
Yeah, I definitely think the first one was better. I just do.
Yeah.
For some of the reasons that I want
Mm-hmm.
to talk about a little bit in a few minutes here, particularly about the storytelling and the type of
Mm-hmm.
story that's being told.
Yeah.
So I kind of like the first one better. This one's fine. I don't think it is. I'm certain I won't watch it as many times as I watched the first one over and over again. But I am also certain that I am going to be rewatching it because it's a lot of fun and entertaining. I'm curious, what did you think about Michael Keaton's reprisal of this particular role? I mean, we're talking 36 years later.
Well, I think one of the interesting things about this is he was so caked up in makeup, had mold and stuff all over his face anyway, that he looked the same.
Yeah, I know, it was crazy, right?
It was really kind of a great role to reprise because he could be in his in his 70s now?
Yeah, he's got to be right at 70. Yeah.
Or yeah, so somewhere in 70. So like he's you're right, significantly older, but he still brought the same energy and enthusiasm. I think Michael Keaton is just that kind of actor anyway. But yeah, he could really kind of step back into this role, and he played it up just like he did, and he looked the same. There was no need for digital de-aging or anything like that, which at least that is the reason on the surface that Tim Burton gave for not bringing back the Maitlands, Alec Baldwin, Gina Davis, because he wasn't interested in digital de-aging. He wanted to do a different story and stuff. I'm sure there's maybe more to that, maybe more with Alec Baldwin's Alec Baldwin's nature, but still, I think that Michael Keaton stepping back into that role worked really well, and it was fun to see him back in there. He looked the same as he did 36 years ago.
It speaks volumes of what an incredible actor he is in general.
Yeah.
Every time he takes on any role, he just embodies the role. I mean, I remember when he was cast as Batman with Burton, it turns out. And I just thought, oh no, what have they done? Why in the world? I mean, this is so.
He's the wrong guy.
Yeah, he is definitely the wrong guy. And then, of course, he proved, no, he was not the wrong guy. He was incredible. Yeah. And he's just that kind of actor. He's going to take every role and run away with it. It was beautiful. Yeah. Well, you mentioned Alec Baldwin, and maybe there was some reasons why they didn't use him. Maybe there were other reasons. Kind of related to it, it's no secret that the actor who played the dad in the first movie was arrested in, I think, 2002, 2003, for soliciting a minor for nude photos, and actually had possession of them, and then also didn't report himself as a sex offender and all of that. So what did you think of Burton's, and he has said, I don't. There's no defense to any of this. He has said he regretted it and that he won't. That he's never done it again, never will do it again. What did you think of Burton's decision to not recast him? And then follow up to that, how well do you think they handled the dad not being there?
Yeah. So I think it was the right decision, obviously, not to invite Jeffrey Jones back.
Absolutely.
I don't think he should have been in there. And I think it would have been pretty obvious if they had recast him. Now, they also could have just downplayed it and sent him to the afterlife or had him go away or any number of things, just like they did for the Maitlands. I thought the way they dealt with it was kind of hilarious. It was kind of funny to see. I mean, everyone knows, and so they kind of made a joke out of it. And I think that played pretty well. I think the other thing about this movie that was kind of fun is I think this is the most Tim Burton-y movie that we've had in a long time.
Agreed.
He's ended his contract with Disney and he's back to working with Warner Brothers, and so he's did all Tim Burton-y stuff. And so I think the fact that we get like the introduction to the dad is in claymation. I think
perfect. That was brilliant.
It was hilarious, and it was also like, okay, well, this is kind of classic Tim Burton because it was also a really weird way to handle it. It was not the way you would typically handle this thing, and I liked it. I thought he handled it really well. What was your?
I think it's the best handling of writing a person out of a sequel or a follow-up movie or a follow-up show that I've ever seen. I thought it was quite brilliant because technically the dad's in the whole movie all the way up to the end of it. He's actually in the movie, and they handle it in such a way that they don't need the previous actor. And so it doesn't overly call attention to itself because he's there and they're just having fun and making fun of the character. I really did think that was sort of a brilliant move in the writing, which brings us to the question of writing. What did you think of the writing of this one, of the storyline and that? What were your kind of feelings of, did they do a great job? Did they knock it out of the park? What did you think?
It depends on which part of the story you're talking about, I think.
Isn't that the problem, though? Isn't that sort of the problem?
Yeah. I mean, although I think though that if we'd done another pass at this, Mark, that we could have cleaned this up and made it a really excellent movie, I think is what I mean by that. That pieces of this are really good, but I agree with everyone who said that there are just too many plot lines because and I didn't read anything about the movie ahead of time. I just went in and watched it, and I thought the ex-wife. So there's Beetlejuice's ex-wife that's in this, that's coming for him and stuff. And as soon as I walked out of the theater, I'm like, if she had not been in this movie,
exactly,
would anything have changed? And no,
not
like
much.
that character was completely unnecessary. Just, I mean, yeah, it was kind of fun, but I guess Tim Burton is dating this actress, right? And that's maybe why she's in there.
What's going on. It's got to be.
It's got to be. Well,
it doesn't add anything to the storyline. As a matter of fact, it complicates it.
Yes, and I mean, if you just took her out, the story still works. Just don't tell that piece of. Same with Willem Dafoe's character.
I agree. See, I was going to say the same thing.
He could be written out, and it wouldn't have changed anything. And I think that if we hadn't had those characters, the story would have felt a lot more similar, maybe more authentic to the original. It would have had a similar feel and pacing, I think, as the original, and probably would have been a better movie. So
yeah, I completely agree. And I'm a little confused by it because you brought up the practical effects several times already, and I love that they use practical effects. I want to hear your take on it as well, because it felt like to me, choosing, even though we have better CGI and everything now than when you first made it, choosing to continue using practical effects, one, felt like it was a continuation, like it still felt in the same world as the original one. And I also think that it ages so much better than CGI tends to. So there's something brilliant about that, because this is the kind of movie that people are going to watch and continue to watch and share with their kids and that kind of thing. So I love that decision, but I'm curious why they didn't take the same approach with the storyline. It was a pretty straightforward storyline in the first one, and that
Yeah.
worked. It allowed the actors to kind of really get into the roles and play them up and have all the fun that they could with them and not get too bogged down in multiple storylines, which I felt like they did this time. And I hate that they did that. But what did you think of the use of practical effects? You've hinted at that a little bit already.
You know, I think that you're 100% right. Practical effects tend to hold up a lot better than CGI. And you know, we had a couple weeks that we took off from Moonshine Jesus for a variety of reasons, and so I was watching other things. I didn't have assignments to watch, and so I was watching some old sci-fi movies, and I was watching like 2001: A Space Odyssey and the original Alien and Aliens and Blade Runner and all these that have really practical effects. And then I was thinking back to some of the movies we've watched over the course of the season, like particularly the Star Wars prequel movies, you know, from the late 90s, early 2000s. And the CGI is so cartoon, it just ruins it. And you know, George Lucas has put those back in the original films too, and has kind of ruined those. And so the practical effects from say the 60s and 70s and 80s hold up so much better than CGI. And even if you go back to sci-fi fantasy stuff from 10 years ago when the CGI was a little more advanced, still it ages really poorly. And so I went back before Beetlejuice and just watched Beetlejuice. I thought this holds up pretty well.
Right. It really does.
I mean, the sandworms are, you know, but they cleaned that piece up and still kept them practical. So I thought it worked well. I thought it was a smart decision.
And it works sort of perfect for this movie too, because the practical effects are in a way that they're imperfect. They're perfectly imperfect kind of thing. Like I can't remember. I heard an interview with one of the actors, and I can't remember which person it was, but that was their words, that it perfectly imperfect. And I kind of like that description of what it does, which is perfect for Beetlejuice. Like, it's a little goofy, it's a little silly, but it also feels a little real and a little grounded. Just absolutely love it. It's a fun watch. I think everybody should go out and make sure they catch it. Watch it on the big screen. It's even more fun. There's several things that kind of take advantage of the large screen when they're in the moon of Saturn and that kind of stuff. It's really cool. So anyway, we could continue geeking out, but we really should move on and talk about some little more serious stuff. So let's take a quick drop.
Right.
Come back on the other side and have our Theo Politico segment. Catch you on the other side.
Welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. We are moving into our Theo Politico segment, talking about theology and politics in Beetlejuice. And you know what? You can do it, folks. It is Beetlejuice, and there is some theology and politics in there. So, Mark, I want to ask you about one of the characters who I thought was interesting, and that's Father Damien, the priest, who's in this, who's kind of some comic relief throughout.
He definitely is.
And so one of my favorite scenes is whenever he is at the funeral for the dad who we've been talking about, and in an attempt to be comforting, I suppose, rambles off about 20 seconds of King James English gobbledygook. And Catherine O'Hara's character looks at him seriously. And when he finally finishes, she just says, "What?" like she has no idea what he's even talking about, you know? Which got me thinking. One of my favorite lines, just the whole theater erupted in laughter. Which I mean, I think is just another good thing about this movie is a lot of the jokes did land, which I thought really did. Good. Yeah. And we should just appreciate that, because that is not always the case. But they did in this one. And this one really landed, where she just looks and says, "What?" And I think one of the reasons that it really landed is because a lot of people view religion a lot like that. Religion is just speaking a different language. And so Mark, I wondered if you could say a little bit more about the kind of ways that churches approach this stuff,
Yeah.
like using a lot of like churchy words and theology that
Yeah.
maybe isn't super relevant to our lives.
Right.
Churches do that, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
are there ways that we can maybe avoid that or get past that or something?
Right. Yeah. I mean, there has always been this thing within religion to try to make it exclusive and make it special and make it bigger than
Mm.
the rest of life, and so we end up doing all these ridiculous things, adding dogma that's built on all kinds of old ways of seeing the world, and then
Mhm.
protecting it to no end, and using language that's just absolutely ridiculous. And it does it is a joke. That's why that works so well. Is we've all been involved in some kind of religious thing where they got very religiosity language going like mad, and just kind of looked around at everyone else and is like, are they getting this? Because I'm not getting this. This is weird. This is weird, right? I'm not. This is weird. And so, I mean, I think that churches that are doing a good job
Mhm.
have started to figure out that if you cannot connect with a person's life today, right now, in a meaningful, significant way, then what are you doing? This mystical, magical afterlife, this mystical, magical God that is removed from us and that we can't be in association with, is useless. It's great to control people, and it's great to be able to control that God when you do it that way. But if you want to make it real and genuine and have an impact on people, let's use the language that we use when we're talking about movies. Let's use the language that we use when we're having a conversation with our best friend. Let's make it matter. We've got to move away from the dogma. We've got to move away from the language that is simply created to keep people out or to force them to learn certain ways of doing things, leap hurdles so they can get in. It's just ridiculous. And I know you are probably the same. I'm done with it. I find it useless and can't run fast enough away from it. What are your thoughts?
I completely agree. I mean, even like names for parts of the church that are just like nonsensical, like the narthex. Like, what the hell's a narthex?
The narthex,
like
the ass.
The ass. Yeah, just call them what they are. People, or the undercroft. We had a lot of undercrofts in New England. Like the basement. Like,
right? You mean the basement?
Why do we need to come up with these words? And I think like people like us are I mean, not like us, but like types are really responsible for this.
Who we followed, absolutely.
Yeah, that's right. Well, people who've been there before, and people who I think want to make themselves feel like theology is a real degree or something like that. Like, okay, well, we need to use lots of
big ridiculous words,
$10 words, or whatever.
There's a lot of $10 words in a theology degrry. There are a lot of $10 words,
and we need to use them so that we can make ourselves feel superior to the congregation. And I think that's really troubling, really problematic, because what like pastors ought to be doing is helping congregations to understand Jesus's teaching and not like try to set ourselves up like higher than people.
Let's make it more accessible, not less accessible. I mean, that's not that hard of a concept, people.
Is it any wonder that the church is dying whenever the primary goal is to make the gospel less accessible? So that you have to go through a mediator to be able to reach it.
All, man.
Yeah,
it drives me nuts. It really does.
Me too. I remember being in a patristics class in seminary, like a church fathers class, and we're reading all this crap theology that no one could have ever known. It was just like them explicating on whatever they thought about some random thing that you could never know. And I remember that it didn't resonate with me, obviously. And I turned to the person I was sitting next to. I'm like, well, let's come back tomorrow and split some more hairs, right? Because that's what a lot of theology is doing, is splitting theological hairs about stuff that we can never know. And so I think like people who confess that like say King James English and the King James version of the Bible, that's also really problematic because it's not a language that's really understandable.
Yeah.
So yeah, Father Damien, thank you for that. I want to ask you one more Father Damien question
Okay,
while
all right.
we're on the topic. So I was reading a theologian who had went through and watched Beetlejuice, and was particularly taken by Father Damien's stance that everybody is welcome, while he was clearly going around, like, say, on Halloween and trying to catch people in their sins when people weren't really welcome. Now, we can agree that I think churches often do this, that they say everybody's welcome, but they don't mean that. How can churches be better at actually welcoming everybody? And should there be limits on the welcome ever?
Let's start with the last question. Should there be limits on the welcome ever? Yes. I know you didn't expect me probably to say that. Yes, there should be limits. Anytime if your welcome puts someone at risk or in danger, then it's the wrong welcome. We don't need to be doing that. That's the only one that we should be limiting. But yes, we should be limiting that. What churches have to do, particularly the largest majority of churches, is change their stupid theology. That's where you got to start, is when you got a theology that is so judgmental and condemning and has a hell that actually exists that you believe people are going to go to. That's where you start. You got to address the core of your issue, of that issue, and that starts in theology for churches. We've got to do a better job at educating our folks so that they understand what the real radical inclusivity of the love of Jesus really looked like, and how he practiced it, and how he tried to teach us to be better at it. And then you put it into practice. You have to love radically, even those in some cases it has to be, if it's making you uncomfortable, double down on love. Dig into it. Matter of fact, you're going to find that you have experienced the most spiritual growth if you will be more actively pursuing trying to understand how to love and be welcoming a person who somehow it feels making you uncomfortable, not in a unsafe way, but in a way that I'm not used to it. And this is pushing my boundaries in places that I need to understand about myself so that I can be more fully loving and inclusive. So we could write a book about this.
And churches need one because they have a really hard problem with this. So maybe we should.
Absolutely.
I agree with you about welcoming, about like limiting the welcome too. But it's not. So sometimes people will push back on this because we always talk about welcome in my congregation, and they'll be like, "Well, but what about like if someone brings a gun into the church or something?" Like, well, obviously that's not safe. Or
That's a different story.
Predator or something. Like, obviously that's different. What we mean is you're not excluded here because of fundamental things about who you are as a person,
100%.
right? Now, certainly if like you said, if there are things that make other people unsafe, then you set boundaries. That is being responsible for the people in your congregation. But that's different than what most churches do when they say everyone is welcome. Because most churches say everyone is welcome, but then they don't mean that. Like if you come from a different political ideology, or
you're welcome to show up as long as you eventually change to be like us.
That's right. In most churches, that also means like the color of your skin,
unfortunately.
I know, right? Because I mean, it's also like racial. That actually, we actually don't want you unless you can kind of be white, and that's really problematic. And so, I think that churches need to do exactly what you were saying, which I think is also like look at who isn't there and ask why people aren't there, and then invite people to come. Because I mean, if we really believe that we're all reflections of God's divine image, then having that full diversity represented is really, really important. So, absolutely. I mean, that's how we live into being church better, and I think it makes us better Christians. It makes us a better faith community.
It's how you more fully experience the presence of God. I mean, through that diversity. If it's You need full diversity to fully experience the presence of God. You just do.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember saying that at one church, and one of the members said, well, we've got the diversity we've got. And I'm like, I'm not sure that we should rest on our laurels if everyone is white and over 80 and like kind of upper middle class. That doesn't feel like we've really tried very hard.
Yeah,
So I think maybe we could try a little bit harder than that. Okay, I want to shift gears a little bit. Thank you, Father Damian, for providing those insights for us.
And the actor was great in that role, by the way.
He was hilarious.
Yeah. Loved it.
And delivered the line so deadpan too that helped
Yeah.
it land. And it wasn't lost on the audience. So Beetlejuice is all about the afterlife, Mark. And so I want to talk about that just a little bit. Is there a Christian view of the afterlife? And if so, do you think it's right? Or if there's not a Christian view of the afterlife, should there be a unified Christian view? What's your perspective?
Is there a Christian view? There are certainly views that are labeled as Christian. Are they biblical? Almost always no. And almost always they're designed to manipulate people and to instill fear into people. So I'm just going to leave it there in terms of my answer for that part of the question.
Yeah.
Should there be a unified Christian view of the afterlife? No, it's useless. It doesn't do us any good. It's not helpful. It's all guesswork. Let's be worried about the here and now. Let's be worried about this life and those folks that are being marginalized and hurt and who are suffering. And let's make a heaven on earth, which I believe, and I know from our discussions you do too, that's what Jesus was trying to teach us to do. Is that there is a real present possibility of heaven and earth in every moment if we only choose to create it. That's the only thing that really matters in relationship to any concept of afterlife. It's the concept of heaven on earth, and anything else is just guesswork at best and tools to manipulate people at worst. I got no use for it. What about you?
Yeah, so I think you're 100% right about the only thing we can control really is our reaction to the situations here and now and creating, the heaven on earth. I think it's interesting, though, for Christians to talk about, and I think certainly that the what has become the Christian view on the afterlife is absolutely used to manipulate people. But I think that when we engage a little bit in our imagination on what could be next, or if there's a next, or if there's not a next, that does help expand our minds and our theology. And I was talking to a group of college students last night who have grown up in this very rural Missouri community with like Southern Baptist theology, heaven and hell and all that, deeply ingrained. It's in the water there. And I was talking about how, like whenever we deconstruct, our minds maybe contract a little bit, but then maybe like expand. And whenever we think about like the vastness of the universe and all that is possible and how small we are and how like our view of God is all too often way too small. And maybe our view of like the afterlife and all this that's possible, like it's limited by our imagination. And whenever we think of an ever expansive universe and us just being a part of like the 2 trillion galaxies out in the known universe, that's really incredibly expansive. And whenever we think about, the matter of our being literally something else after we die, literal reincarnation, I think is really interesting to spend some time with. And so I would love to talk more about that. I'd love to talk more about like if views of the afterlife are helpful or not, but I can't, because if I do, we're not going to get to talk in our favorite section.
We can't do
segment.
that.
We got to do it. It's make me look stupid. So why don't we take another drink, come back, and try to make each other look stupid.
Hello and welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. You're joining us for our Make Me Look Stupid segment. During this segment, sometimes we ask a question to try to stump our co-host. Sometimes we ask a question that's already stumped us. And sometimes we ask them to make a prediction just to see if it might stump them in the future by making them look stupid in the future by getting it completely wrong. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that this time. I do have a question for you that kind of, I felt like it was, so we talked earlier about the storyline and the writing, and I think we kind of both agree the writing was hit and miss. There were times that they just nailed it, and there were other times where it felt like it got out of control.
Yeah.
There's this piece that I feel like they missed an opportunity, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it.
Okay.
So clearly, Astrid has paranormal sensitivities that she can see Jared.
Yes. Yeah.
And ultimately can see other ghosts, it turns out. Why did they not say more about that or do something with it? I mean, it's a pretty big deal, and they just sort of breeze over it. I don't understand.
I think they're saving it for the third one. I think they're going to come back
too.
for the third one, and I think it's also the fault of too many storylines. We didn't quite develop the stuff that needed to be developed, and that's the expense of too many too many storylines. So I think that really that would have been more helpful to spend more. And she was a fascinating character, and Jenna Ortega is always wonderful. I didn't see it coming, Mark, the fact that she could see ghosts. I mean, I guess I should have, but I didn't. That caught me by surprise.
Yeah.
I didn't see it. Did you see that coming?
Yeah.
You knew.
There were just little moments, like everything in his room was very dated, like too dated. Like everything seemed like it was like the 80-ish, the 80s. And and there were just little tiny things that were like
didn't see his parents really.
Yeah.
I
well,
mean,
that was the one that really gave it away. That was the parents, and it was when she was in the car with Winona Ryder, and I'm going to meet them or something, and that's when it hit. I went, oh yeah, because I turned to my wife. We were watching it together when we couldn't see their faces. I said, they didn't let us see their faces. There's something going on there. And then I let it ride. But then when Winona's character, I was like, oh, okay. Now I see what's going on.
Yeah.
But it was fun. It was a great reveal. It was so much fun.
It was fun. But I would have loved to have seen that more developed. But I think we're going to see a third one. What's your call?
I think so too. And I think that this is exactly it. It turns out that Jenna Ortega and Winona Ryder have struck up a deep friendship. They are like tied at the hip, it turns out. I think that those two will fight to make sure it happens. It might be a Beetlejuice-less Beetlejuice. I don't know, because I don't know how much longer Michael Keaton's going to want to do that role. But we're going to get something. I don't have any doubt about it.
Yeah, he may, because I heard him talking about the canceled Batgirl movie, and they're like, "Oh, weren't you really sad when Warner Brothers shelved that?" And he's like, "I didn't care. I made a butt ton of money." And so it may be that if they offer him a butt ton of money for Beetlejuice, maybe he'll come back. Yeah,
that'd be great. Well, how about you? You get an opportunity to come at me now.
Okay, this is not as much about the movie, but just a general wonderment based on this movie. So this is this clearly, this came out in time for Halloween, and this is going to be a very popular costume this Halloween, I'm sure. Awesome. And so you and I have both lived in parts of the country, Mark, where Christians have said that you really shouldn't celebrate Halloween as a Christian because it's an anti-Christian holiday. Is there anything biblical about that? Is there any biblical basis for that, or why do people say that?
Well, it's because it's of Satan.
Satan is very biblical too.
Very biblical. Very biblical. Well, my experience has always been that it's all around evil spirits, and that we don't want to be participating, and that the fear of the children being taken over by evil spirits and all that kind of stuff, completely ignoring the reality of All Hallowed Eve and what that has been historically for the church and what it could mean. I just think it's yet another way of trying to put fear and control people. And it's just absolutely ridiculous, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And I grew up in a place where we like that was kind of controversial, and churches wanted to do like fall festivals or something like that
Oh
instead of
yeah.
Halloween parties. I'm
We
like,
still I'm in the
in
South,
North
and
Carolina, that's still
there's still, trunk or treat instead, so that you don't go out and there's still those kind of fall festivals with trunk or treats and stuff that are very much built off of this old school way of thinking that there's something inherently evil about Halloween.
about Halloween. But I think it's like people can't really put their finger on exactly what it is. And I think that's
Mhm.
because, like, in a lot of ways, Halloween is more Christian than, say, Christmas or
Oh yeah,
or maybe even Easter. That
yeah,
like this may be the
absolutely.
most Christian of the holidays that we've got.
Right.
And so it's kind of ironic. But I think it's also, Mark, that people don't really understand like the stuff about possession and stuff in the Bible. I've had
Right.
some folks come up to me
That's
recently and
fair.
ask me like, "Well, what is with all this stuff about possession? Do you believe in like evil spirits and stuff?" And I'm
Right.
like, "Well, no. I don't believe in that because, the people use demons in the Bible to talk about all kinds of
It's
things.
yeah.
Today, what we might call physical or mental illness, or even like metaphorically to talk about, say, the Roman army, say for in that one where Jesus exercises the legion into
The
the
Legion.
pigs and all of that.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
so I think if you're out there and you're a Christian, you're like, should I celebrate Halloween? Yes, you should
Please
dress
do.
up as Beetlejuice.
Enjoy. That's Beetlejuice.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
get your Beetlejuice themed costume ready for Halloween.
I love it.
So,
I love it.
uh,
And I
uh,
love the recommendation. So listen, speaking of recommendations, we
yeah,
need to decide what to watch for our next week's show. And I have
yeah.
a recommendation.
Okay, good.
We've done a few anniversary type shows where we went back and
Hmm.
watched
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
The
yeah,
25th anniversary of Matrix is coming up this week, and they're going
yeah.
to re-release
Ooh,
it to the theaters. I
uh-huh.
think that would be there's so much that we could talk about,
Yeah.
and just in the first one alone. So let's do the original Matrix on its
Okay.
25th anniversary, and I think it'll be what a great movie and so much to talk about.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that. I mean, such a groundbreaking movie too, in a
Yeah,
lot of ways.
yeah,
Special
really
effects,
was.
in terms of story, and all that. I'm down, man. Let's do it.
Excellent. Fantastic. We have a plan. I love it when a plan comes together. Listen, thank you to all of you. I got my cigar.
I love it when the plan comes together.
I pity the fool. No, I appreciate all of you. We do very much for listening to the show. I say it every time. You are the reason we get to do this, and this is one of the moments of every week that we both look forward to. So thank you,
Absolutely.
thank you for joining us for this, and we will see you the next time on the Moonshine Jesus Show.
Moonshine Jesus.